Hi everyone, I'm the Rambling Photon, and today I want to talk about sources of disagreement and how we deal with them. So I think there are basically three ways to disagree with somebody, but two of them are fundamentally not disagreeing with the person, but rather disagreeing with reality and logic, and so it's just sort of ways of being wrong. So let's cover those first. So, quick overview of those three ways. You can disagree with them on facts, you can disagree with them because you use bad logic, and you can disagree with them because you have different values. So if you are using bad logic, your disagreement is with your own values because you haven't thought it through, you haven't gone all the way through it and made it consistent. You don't have a consistent position. You're just floating in the wind. Similarly, if you're using bad facts or if you're using incorrect facts to come to your conclusions, or if you're using incomplete facts that do not fully represent the situation, then you're basically just being wrong. But there are different degrees of wrongness. So you can think of this in sort of a fundamental way as similar to how I think I've discussed science before, where you're on a quest to become less wrong. Now, you're wrong still, but you're just not as wrong as before. So, taking a simple example, if you say the Earth is flat, now, that's wrong, obviously. Well, actually, not obviously. It's wrong because we have been able to show through evidence that it's wrong. But as a first impression, it's good enough for your day-to-day, right? You don't really have to worry about it until you get to larger scales, right? But then you can say that the Earth is round, the Earth is spherical. Now, is that completely correct? Well, no, obviously not. It is not completely correct because a perfect sphere wouldn't have mountains and valleys, it wouldn't have features, right? So that's obviously not 100% correct, but it is more correct for many applications than saying that the Earth is flat, right? Now, obviously, you can sort of point to that same thing with the Earth, flat earthers. The Earth is obviously not completely flat because it's not a perfect plane, but whatever. That's sort of pedantic. We can ignore that for now. The actual structure of the Earth can be pretty well approximated, though, by a sphere when you're looking at it at the scale of space. That is not perfectly accurate, but it is better than approximating it with a plane. Right? So going from the plane to the sphere has made you less wrong, right? Now it's actually got some weird bulges in the middle and things because of the rotation of the Earth that's causing the equator to actually be further out than the poles are. If that matters to you, then you can adopt that model and you become less wrong. Are you still 100,000% correct? No, because you're not including all of the other fine features that exist on the Earth. Okay, so that's just a simple example. Another physical example would be going from Newton's laws to Einstein's laws. So if we take Newton's theory of gravitation and mass and motion, that works for the vast majority of applications. You don't need to go any deeper than that. But it is not 100,000% right. Okay? There's a correction that happens when you get into special cases where the approximation breaks down. And in those cases, you need to use some other model that more accurately captures that data. Right? So similarly, when we disagree with somebody, or when we're disagreeing with reality, which is never a good idea, when we're using different facts, right? And we might be distorting them or using them inappropriately, right? Now, we also can have bad logic, right? Which is basically just not properly propagating the implications of our facts into our conclusions. Right? So if you're using bad logic, you're basically using fallacies and argumentation which doesn't follow. You're using formal logical fallacies, right? And so that's another way you can disagree with somebody. To me, actual disagreements take place in the value and ideology side. The disagreements on the ideology side are the disagreements that exist even if everyone agrees on the facts. Okay? And this is what makes them, to me, the most interesting, because this is where you try and hash out what people's actual values are and how they differ, right? Now, there is that feedback that can happen where your ideology and your values taint which facts you use. Okay, so if we consider the space of all facts, right? So reality, right? We can never know all of them, right? So there's this group of facts, okay? Now, for a particular topic, there's some subset of those facts which is relevant, or which are relevant. These are the relevant facts to whatever given topic that we're talking about, whether it be, is Islam a religion of peace, or should Trump be president, or should abortion be legal, or is socialism good or bad, or whatever, right? So for any given subject, there will be a different bubble of relevant facts, okay? Now, in the ideal world, we would be able to identify these, and we would be able to come to our proper, fully informed conclusion based on all of the relevant facts, okay? The problem is that both sides of any given topic, and I'm saying both because it's simpler than saying all 6 billion sides that exist, because each person is going to have a very slightly different opinion. Each person is going to use a different set, is going to view a certain set of those as relevant, okay? So each, you can think of it as tribes. So we're going to do 2 tribes just to be simple. So tribe A is going to have a set of facts which they view as relevant to the given topic, okay? Now, some of that is going to overlap with the actual relevant facts. Some of it is going to overlap with actual facts that aren't actually relevant, okay? And then some of them are just going to be wrong, so they're not going to overlap with actual facts at all, okay? Then you have tribe B, which is also going to have the same setup. They're going to have a set of facts within the relevant facts that they view as properly relevant, a set of facts outside of the relevant facts that they think are relevant but are not, and then a set of false facts, a set of incorrect assumptions, or incorrect data for whatever, right? Which they are going to use to support their argument, right? Now there's that region in the middle which they both have in common. So the facts that both sides agree on, okay? And this is going to be a smaller subset of the relevant facts, hopefully. So when you have a discussion between these two, part of the problem is that neither side really agrees on what the facts actually are, okay? Now, of course, my actual position is I consider all of the relevant facts all the time, period. I never consider any facts that are not relevant, because I'm, better than all of you. But anyway, so we have all of these relevant facts, and we disagree on what those are. But this is, like I said before, this is sort of a disagreement with reality to an extent, especially the stuff that's outside the relevant facts. The problem is that even when we agree, and even if we restrict our facts that we use to the true facts, right, the ones that everybody can agree that are true, we're still going to have disagreements, okay? Now, do I think it's important to fact check and make sure that we don't use incorrect data? Yes, absolutely. Everybody should be doing that. And I think that the best people to do that in some ways are the other side, because they are the ones who are the most invested in the other group being wrong. So the quality of the fact check will tend to be better. Well, you hope it's better. But humans are fallible. We're not going to make the correct call all the time. Okay? But what the actual disagreements are in values. And this, I think, like I said before, this is the most interesting part, because this is where you get down to the nitty-gritty of what your principles are, what your ideology is. And the way that you refute that is, I think, far more interesting and possibly more persuasive. If you can get somebody to change the core value somehow, that is going to change their ideology more than facts ever could, right? So, and this is partly because of confirmation bias. So we can talk about confirmation bias is it's basically the shaping of the facts, or the cherry picking of the facts to fit your ideology, right? So in the case of tribes A and B, the fact that they are using a subset of the facts of the actual facts is a part of confirmation bias, right? And so when you introduce new facts, what they do is they just either ignore them completely, or they do sort of nice little mental gymnastics as to why they can safely ignore those facts. But if you can demonstrate that some of their core values are either in contradiction to each other, and make them admit that some of their core values are in contradiction to each other, it makes them have to pick one over the other. Okay? Now, they might not see them as contradiction at first, but I think if you can walk them through the chains of logic to get them to realize that there are some conclusions that they don't want, right? So you use their own ideals against them in some sense to force them to be consistent. If you can force them to be consistent, then you can maybe, hopefully, get them to be consistent in your direction, right? So if, for example, you get somebody who, say, values women's rights, right? And they also value religious freedom, and particularly they value tolerance of Islam, right? So they are not Islamophobic, and they have an identity of not being Islamophobic, and also being in favor of women's rights, right? If you can force them to admit that those two might be in conflict, if you can get them to acknowledge that there are certain parts of the religious doctrine that are counter to the other values, the equal rights for women or gays or whatever, you might be able to get them to begin to renounce one of those. And hopefully you get it into the direction where they renounce the one that you want them to, right? So in this case, they would be renouncing a tolerance of the religious doctrines of Islam, at least for me. If you, for some reason, want them to renounce equal rights for women and gays and the LGBT community, well, I guess thanks for watching my videos and disagreeing with me. So I think that once you can get them to have a consistent value system, and if they hold true to that value system, I'm not sure that there's any other conversion that you can do beyond that. I'm not sure that you would be able to get them to go further, to change their core values, depending on how closely held those are. Now, hopefully you'd be able to get them to change the values to be the better values, which of course is what I hold, clearly. But at that point, that's where the discussion ends. The utility of the discussion ends. If they have a fully internally consistent position that they hold to and are not willing to change, and you have an internally consistent position that you are not willing to change in terms of the ideology, and you both agree on the facts, then your disagreement is really fundamental, and you can't get around it. And once you get to that point, if you can understand their position and respect it, and they can understand your position and respect it, that's when you get to the agree to disagree, the tolerate, but hopefully don't kill. But that is assuming that both of you hold the position that inflicting violence upon those who disagree with you. So if you are one of those people who believes that you should be inflicting violence on those who disagree with you, I disagree, and if you attempt to use violence against me, I will respond and defend myself. But also, those are the people that the rest of us, the people who are not going to do that, really need to watch out for and to take measures against, because those are the people who are using violence and bringing violence into, or as a replacement for discourse. When they see a disagreement, instead of saying, okay, well, let's talk it out and then agree to disagree, they're going to be the ones who talk it out and then kill you. And that's not really a very moral position, at least in my opinion. So anyway, those are some of my thoughts on discussions and the roots of actual disagreement. So if you like my content, like, share, subscribe, all that shit. If you disagree with me, leave a comment below. Let me know. We can talk about it. Hopefully not kill each other. And I've been the Rambling Photon. Hope to catch you next time.